んにちは。
英語ディベート部の企画にお越しいただきありがとうございます。よろしくお願いします。本日の企画では皆さんにディベート部の部員がいつもの部活の練習と大会で行っているディベートの風景をお見せしたいと思います。先ほど論題を知ったディベーターたちが今スピーチの準備をしているので、まずはディベートというものについて説明をさせていただいてから、実際の渋々生によるディベートの試合をご覧いただくので、ぜひ楽しみにしていてください。渋々のディベート部では大会では強いにもかかわらず、実は普段はとても緩い部活なので、皆さんもリラックスしてお楽しみください。ではまず、ディベートって何でしょうか。ディベートとは、ある論題に対して肯定側と否定側に分かれて審査員を説得する形の討論です。ここでよく誤解されがちなのですが、相手チームを説得するのではなく、審査員を説得することが目的です。なので、今回の試合でも両サイドのディベーターは審査員である観客の皆様を説得しようと全力を尽くします。では、例として論題を一つ考えてみましょう。例えば、タバコを廃止すべきだという論題があります。ディベートではその論題に対して肯定側は、タバコは健康にも悪いし他人にも迷惑ですよと主張するかもしれません。それに対して否定側は、そんなの喫煙室あるしいいんじゃない、そもそもタバコ吸うのって個人の自由じゃないと言います。それに対して肯定側は、いやでも政府には人々の健康を保障する義務があると反駁し、否定側はそれに対して、それは政府が喫煙室を作ってあげれば解決じゃん、禁止したら今の喫煙者にストレスが溜まってしまうよと、このようにスピーチを通して論理的に審査員を説得していきます。これがディベートの基本です。また先ほども言いましたが、ディベートにはいろいろな種類があります。渋々のディベート部で主に行っているのはパーラメンタリーディベートというディベートです。実はこの種類のディベートはイギリスのパーラメント、つまり議会を模範にして作られたものです。なのでディベートをするときは肯定側が野党、否定側が与党となります。次に今日のディベートで使用する形式のパーラメンタリーディベートの構成を説明します。パーラメンタリーディベートの中でもいろいろな形式がありますが、今日は詳しくは説明できないので、とりあえずパーラメンタリーディベートのノースアメリカンスタイルという種類の形式を使うということだけ理解していただければ十分です。まず肯定側の総理大臣、否定側の野党代表、肯定側与党2人目、否定側野党2人目の順に3分ずつスピーチをし、その後に否定側のまとめと肯定側のまとめを2分間ずつで行います。大会の時は論題が発表され20分で準備をし、1人7分のスピーチを行うことが多いです。では今日のディベートでも何度か見られると思います。 Points of Information、 略してポイというものを紹介します。ポイは相手チームのスピーチ中に立ち上がり、スピーチに対して質問や指摘をすることです。ポイをするときは席から立って Point of Information、 ポイと大きな声で言います。その時スピーチをしている人の許可が得たら15秒間で話しますが、スピーカーが Yes と言って許可をしないと話してはいけません。スピーチの残り時間が少ない時は相手に No thank you、 ポイを受け取りませんと言われてしまう可能性がありますが、そういう時は残念ながら素直に受け止めてまた座らなければなりません。ここで渋々英語ディベート部について少し紹介します。渋々のディベート部は渋谷 Association of Debaters、 略してSADと呼ばれています。部員は70名ほどいて、週に2回8階の視聴覚室に集まって練習をしています。兼部も全然 OK なので、他の文化部や運動部と兼部している部員が多いです。またディベート部は英語ができる帰国生が集まっているイメージがあるかもしれませんが、一般生を含めた全員がディベートに楽しく参加できるよう、部員全員で助け合いながら一般生のサポートをしています。実際一般生は各学年に何人もいて、大会にもバンバン出てますし、大会に出ている他校の生徒もほぼ全員一般生です。 また私たちは毎年花火、肝試し、ハイキングなどをするとても楽しい合宿を伊豆稲取で実施しており、コロナ禍でも去年はオンライン上、今年は学校に通って感染対策を十分に行いながら合宿を行いました。通い合宿であるのにもかかわらず、肝試しや代々木公園の水遊びなど楽しさがいっぱいの合宿でした。ディベート部の特徴はとにかく学年を超えて仲がいいことです。先輩と後輩はお互いに切磋琢磨し合える関係で、部活は基本的に生徒の自主性によって運営しています。縦の関係もとても強く、コロナがなければ先輩と後輩で大会のために海外に泊まりに行ったりもします。またこのような大会に出場して毎年いろいろな場所で活躍しています。2021年に開催された WSDC という世界大会では日本代表チーム初の決勝トーナメントに進出しました。日本で開催されている大会でも優勝、準優勝を重ねており、中高生なのに大学生大会に出場することもあります。表彰式では次から次へと表彰されていて、他の部活の人に呆れられるほどです。コロナウイルスの影響で対面の大会ができないため、去年からオンラインで全ての大会が実施されています。SAD は去年日本初の高校生のオンライン大会を主催し、今年も新芽杯のほか学びのオリンピック空2021というイベントの中でディベートの世界大会空カップを主催しました。それではディベート部の紹介はここまでにして、お楽しみの試合を始めていきたいと思います。先ほど説明しましたディベートの基本を思い返しながら試合を楽しんでいってください。また本日は見学に来てくださった皆様に審査員をしてもらいます。スピーチはもちろんのこと英語ですが、画面に同時通訳をしますし、各スピーチの後に内容の説明をしますのでご安心ください。最後までディベートを聞いて自分を説得した、自分の心を動かしたチームに投票してください。ではお待ちかねの今日の論題を発表します。今日の論題は This house believes that co-ed schools are better than single-sex schools. 共学の方が別学よりもいい、是か非かです。ここで皆様にちょっとしたアンケートを取ってみたいのですが、この中でずっと共学に通っている、もしくは通ってた方ってどれぐらいいますか？では反対に別学にも通ったことがあるよって方、どれぐらいいらっしゃいますか？なるほど、ありがとうございます。いろいろな意見があると思いますが、それらをひっくり返すぐらいの素晴らしいディベートになると思いますので、ぜひご期待ください。それではいよいよ最高に白熱するであろう試合が幕を開けます。法廷側の総理大臣は前へお願いします。
Starting my speech in 3, 2.
Mike.
Uh,
Not that way.
3, 2, and 1. Our schools must be a direct representation of society, ladies and gentlemen. In the same way we cannot learn to ride bicycles from reading instructional books or watching, for example, Big Al-san, right, on his little bicycle with his watermelon helmet going "Jilin sasete moraimasen ka?" to old ladies in Niigata, right? In the same way, we all have to, actually try riding, get onto a bicycle, fall over, and maybe get hurt once or twice to learn. Boys and girls in schools must be exposed to each other and forced to interact in order to gain the skills and confidence to communicate and collaborate with members of the opposite sex in society. We tell you this debate is about several things, right? First, whether making all of our schools co-educational is better than making all of our schools single-sex. So don't get confused. It's not about having a good balance of both. But secondly, and more importantly maybe, whether Shibu is worth your money, right? And whether you should have sent your kid to Tsukukomao Oin instead. That's what this debate is about. Right, 2 arguments from us today. First, preparation for society. Preparation for society, and the second argument about gender equality. My partner will be giving you that argument. So, preparation for society. We must learn to interact with the opposite sex because society is inherently a mix of all kinds of different people. Girls, boys, non-binary, everyone, right? So 3 layers of analysis to prove this argument to you. First, doing something you don't know or doing something you've never done before is always going to be nerve-wracking and extremely, like a challenge, right? You're probably going to fail. But what's also true is that through practice and through practice only can you overcome this kind of fear or awkwardness, right? So in this case, and in the case of this debate, we're talking about participating in class discussions with members of the opposite gender, or practicing for choir competitions, working on class projects for Hiryusai. These kinds of experiences are the kinds of things that allow individuals to learn and accept the other gender, right? And this kind of experience is exactly what the other side, the opposition side today, are not able to support. Students in single-sex schools, as boys and girls, they remain separated for several years at a time, and that because of that, this kind of benefit is something that we bring to you uniquely. Second analysis. We tell you it's especially important that individuals earn this kind of skill during their time at school. Why? Because first, it spares individuals 6 years or even more time of actually, getting used to the other sex, right? So training to change their mindsets and, become more comfortable around girls, boys, just people of the other gender, right? But also, unlike outside in society, school is a place for young, inexperienced kids to basically safely learn and challenge themselves. You're not punished for your mistakes, and your life doesn't depend on it because you're not going to lose your job, right? School is a place made to prepare young children to be as comfortable and as successful in society as possible, and this can only be done when they're given the opportunity to actually ride on the bicycle, right? Which is i.e., interact with the opposite gender on a daily basis. Exactly what we're supporting today. Third and lastly, third analysis, societal productivity. That is our impact for today, right? We tell you that boys and girls are inherently different. They have different needs and skills and live completely different lives. What's important here, though, is that they need to learn to accept their differences. Sure.
But we boys are too shy, too timid to talk to girls. I don't think interaction happens in reality.
Nice, thank you. But I think based on that, on both sides of the house, some girls are going to be shy, some guys are going to be shy, right? What's true on our side of the house, what we can protect at the end of the day, is that in classes you're going to be forced to communicate with other people of the other sex, right? You're forced into groups with random people that are awkward, that are shy, some are assertive, all these different kinds of people. You need to work with them to make sure you get a good grade, for example, in class, right? These are the kind of things, the experiences, the incentives that we can uniquely provide. So going back into our third analysis, right? I told you about how important it is for these people to accept their differences and learn that neither gender is superior. This is exactly what young adults, right, must learn to be able to be productive in society, to be innovative, to improve, right, in society as a whole. Like yin and yang, basically the world is incomplete without ideas and the experiences and the stories that both of these genders can tell. Examples: putting forth maternity and paternity leave and these kinds of laws. Another example: producing skirts, for example, and selling skirts that have pockets inside. Because girls, when we have stuff in our hands, we can't actually put anything in because without trousers, you don't have pockets. Stuff like that, right? For these reasons, and because Shibu is obviously superior to other schools, right? Vote for side government. Thank you so much.
じゃあこれから今総理大臣のリオン先輩が、行ってくれたスピーチの通訳をします。まずはじめに、 まずはじめに彼女のアーギュメントとして一番最初に出てたのが、その社会への準備が必要だということです。まず異性と関わることによって社会において社会において準備ができるということです。で、それにおいて今回は2つ証明しなきゃいけないということを言っていて、まず1つ目が、本当に全部の学校が共学でいいのか。で、2つ目に本当に渋々に生徒自分の子供を渋々に行かせてよかったのかの2つを証明すると彼女は、肯定側の方として言ってました。で、1つ目のアーギュメントとして社会の準備としてまず1つ目に挙げてたのはチャレンジ。例えば異性と話したりとかそういうことをすることにおいてもっと異性と関われるチャンスが増える。例えば飛龍祭とかスポーツフェスティバルとかの準備においてもっと慣れることができるということを初めに言ってて、2つ目に、学校で、異性と関われるっていう、まず学校の特有性としては罰などがそれほど与えられない。間違ったことをしてもその刑務所とかには行かないことによって学校でこういうことをやるべきだと言ってました。で、ミチ先輩からポイントオブインフォメーションがあったと思うんですけど、そこではその男女2人ともどっちとも恥ずかしいから話さないと言ってましたが、それは、絶対に関わらなきゃいけない場面がある。例えばグループプロジェクトとか渋々の場合だったら研修の準備とかで関わらなきゃいけないので、どうして話すことはある。それにおいて社会の準備ができるということを主張していました。以上です。次は否定側の最初のスピーカーです。楽しみにしてください。
始めます。The decision to choose a co-ed school is the decision to pursue a life of frivolous romance over serious learning in high school. On side opposition, we believe a same-sex school is the only way to make a young mind focus on the important things. That is why we are proud to oppose. Before I move on to my point, I have two refutations towards the previous speaker. The previous speaker talked about how it's preparation for society to be able to talk to men, to be able to talk to girls. I have two refutations towards this. Firstly, it's not true that people from same-gender schools have trouble talking to people from the other gender, right? I'd like to first point out that on an intuition basis, most adults in this world are married. Most adults function in co-ed environments despite coming from places like Kaiseo Tsukugoma. Secondly, I think this argumentation relies on a biological essentialism, that boys and girls are fundamentally different in the way that they talk and act. I don't think that is true in a school context, where at the most you're talking about your assignments for the day, or those kinds of things. I don't think there's any fundamental difference in that. Second refutation is that even if it was true, this interaction comes at the price of boys not having a voice in Shibushibu, as Michi Senpai pointed out in his POI. I don't think that's representative of society at all, therefore their point falls. Moving on to my positive matter, about firstly, romance makes studying impossible. So in co-ed schools, students get caught up in romance and therefore neglect their studies in irreversible ways. How is this likely to happen? We think there's a narrative from things like shoujo manga or like anime that when students go to co-ed schools, they should be in romantic relationships. This has a coercive effect on students. That looks like when on school trips, most people in Shibushibu talk about who they like. Sometimes there's pressure to confess love to another student. If you're not in love with somebody else, you feel inferior because you have not had that opportunity. The consequence of this is that everyone is constantly thinking about romantic relationships over things like academics. As a result, we think students are choosing short-term romance over long-term success. The impact of this is that it looks like, for example, breaking up with somebody before tests and therefore failing all of your classes or not listening to class because you keep looking at the person you like. And here I'd like to introduce an analysis about why a healthy balance between academics and romance is impossible. Because I think the other side is likely to be saying things such as it's possible to achieve a balance between academics and romance. You can't. Because yes, you can achieve the balance between sports and academics because you can simply change the amount of time that you spend on each thing. But the uniqueness of romance is that it takes place in your mind. So that even if you want to spend less time on it, it unconsciously invades every aspect of your thinking. That's why it's impossible to control. That's why if you go to a co-ed school, you're more likely to be thinking about romance all the time over something that are actually important, like academics. Why is academics the most important thing during high school? This is because high school is a uniquely important place as a place of learning, right? High school is when you discover your interests. It's when you have your college admission exams. All of these opportunities are not present in university. In comparison, you can fall in love at any time in your life. So we think at the point that you're in high school, you should be focusing on academics, not romance. That is why we are so proud to oppose.
はい、じゃあ否定側第一スピーカーの通訳を始めます。まずはじめに、反駁としてその別学の書いてあるようにその男子が慣れてないからってどうせ言ったら世界の中で結婚してる人はもう大半だから別に男子校女子校行ってても関係ないということを言っていました。で、ポイントに入ると高校特に今の時代とかは恋愛漫画とかも多いことがあって特に中学高校はその恋愛をしなきゃっていうプレッシャーが生徒にかかるからその恋愛とかについて考えちゃう特に異性と同じ場にいることにおいて恋愛しなきゃみたいな風な考え方になっちゃうと言っていました。でそしてその恋愛がなぜそんなに危ないかっていうことを言うともし誰かと付き合うとそれだけについて考えてしまって勉強とかができないと言っており高校においては一番勉強しなきゃ時期大学受験とかもあるわけで一番勉強しなきゃ時期なので生徒は恋愛に集中しちゃって勉強ができないということをポイントとして言ってました。次は、肯定側2番目のスピーカーです。じゃあ萌先輩どうぞ。
We tell you that for a society where all genders and all people are accepted and comfortable in living their lives, we tell you that co-ed schools are the only way to educate young people who are necessary for the sort of society, right? We also tell you that Shibu is a great option to send your child to because of these reasons. Very proud to propose. But first, 3 responses towards the previous speaker. So the previous speaker talked about, how romance makes studying difficult and it leads to students' lives failures as a result, right? 3 things to say here. First, we tell you that this isn't true, right? Because we give you the counterfactual of Luana senpai and Mitsushi senpai, right? We think that they turned out fine regardless of whether or not they were opposite genders. And we say that, the success of these students is not dependent on the environment, but rather by the student's determination in order to study and succeed, right? Second, we tell you that their harm isn't mutually exclusive because teenagers and hormones, exist on either paradigm, right? Meaning that even if you go to a single-sex school, you're going to be obsessed over the idea of dating someone from a different school, etc., right? Finally, we tell you that this is rather good because we think that romance is, a necessary failure in life for teenagers, right? Because you need to have the experience of someone telling you that they don't like you, for example. So moving on to our second argument for today. Our second argument is gender equality. And in this point, we tell you that having students go to a co-ed school better creates the mindset of equal respect for all genders, right? And as an issue, we tell you that the status quo, especially in Japan, where gender equality is a real issue, right? So we give you the example of Suga-san's cabinet, for example, where there's maybe 1 or 2 females, and then the rest are an army of men over the age of 50, right? We tell you that this is bad because it takes away opportunities from women, and it also creates issues like toxic masculinity and worsens them. And we say that because of this, everyone is hurt in this paradigm by these harmful gender, stereotypes, etc., right? We tell you that co-ed schools, Shibu being a great example, are much better educate less biased, more accepting young leaders and members of society, right? Why is this true? We give you 2 layers of analysis. First, we tell you that single-sex schools are bad for gender equality because norms about the opposite gender are ingrained and promoted in these students, right? So we give you the example of if you go to an all-boys school, the societal narratives about women that exist are, sexualized anime characters with extremely short skirts or the good wife role, right? We say that it's all they know because it's all these students know because they don't really have any other exposure to females, and therefore these ideas become internalized. And they keep them with them as they go into society and become adults, right? And we say that this is also true for all-girls schools, for example, expecting boys to be like the strong masculine, like sakab and like jaman role from shoujo manga. And we say that due to the lack of interaction with the opposite gender, like these stereotypes against the opposite gender that limit everyone are promoted in these students, and these polarizing, harmful ideas are grown in these children, and it adds to society's issues and pre-existing gender norms, right? Second layer of analysis. We tell you that this is different and better in Shibu and co-ed schools because we interact with all types of people of both genders every single day, right? In an environment where we not only learn together, but we're also, working together in inkai or hiryusai or club activities, and we were just basically spending every single day with them for 6 years straight, right? We say that as a result, it humanizes the opposite gender instead of just seeing them through, stereotypes or assumptions, and it normalizes the variety of, yes.
You talk about gender roles, don't you think that they're just as likely to be unconsciously rooted in things like romantic relationships?
We can see that gender stereotypes are going to exist to some extent on either side, but we're giving the analysis for why it's less likely on our side, right? We say that as a result of co-ed schools, it normalizes the variety of people that exist because that isn't just cute, quiet girls or strong, athletic males, and therefore mutual respect is cultivated through coexistence, right? And as a result of this, just as much as Luana can be an extremely capable, powerful leader of this school, Mitsushi senpai can found the strongest Koko Eigo Debato in the country, and a male can be Hyusai Angel, all in the same environment, right? And these students learn that being of a gender doesn't define who you are, and it creates students that naturally know that women are just as capable as leaders. Males can be quiet, etc., right? And these ideas are reflected on society as these students become adults, and therefore, as a result, we tell you that co-ed schools better achieve gender equality because these students are the people who are going to have the ability and the will to change the Suga-san's old man government and have a wider variety of citizens within, represented within society, right? We also tell you that, Shibu is a great option for cultivating such students. Very proud to propose. Thank you.
では、法廷が2人目の通訳を始めます。まずはじめに、否定側の反駁として、ミツ先輩、今いらっしゃるミツ先輩、ルアナ先輩のように勉強することによって別に共学に行ってても成功できた例が出てるということにして反駁してました。また男子校女子校に行ってもどうせ恋愛したいという気持ちが消えないと反駁してました。で、セカンドアーキュメント、法廷はセカンドアーキュメント、ジェンダー平等に入ると、まずはじめにその男子校女子校に行くことによってその異性に対してのステレオタイプが生まれる。例えば男子校に行ったらその少女漫画みたいに短いスカートとかで毎日タピオカ飲んでるような女子がほとんどだみたいな風に思っちゃう。で、女子校に行った場合はそのイケメンなサッカー選手ばっかりがいるみたいな風に思っちゃうことによってそういうステレオタイプが生まれて、逆に渋々のような男女6年間一緒にいることによってお互い尊重し合えることができる。一緒に研修の準備、飛龍祭の準備とかすることによってお互い尊重し合えることによってそのステレオタイプが消えてジェンダー平等ができるのではないかと、おっしゃってました。では次は最後のアーギュメントスピーチとして、否定側の2番目のスピーカー、ミツ先輩お願いします。
はい、聞こえますか？大丈夫ですね。私は帰国生ではないので、帰国子女ではないので、少しゆっくりめに話しますが、音声聞こえるといいです。I will start my speech now. Thank you, Chairperson, for the floor, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy to debate against current members of the debate society. My point is very clear. Boys are oppressed by girls. That is why I proudly oppose the motion. Before moving on to my points, I would like to give 3 rebuttals to the other side of the house. Number 1, Prime Minister Rion explained that co-ed schools enable students to learn diverse gender roles. I think the premise and assumption of that logic is that interaction frequently happens. Not true. As I emphasized in my point of information, boys are too timid, too scared, too afraid and shy to talk to girls. For example, when I was in junior high school, I was very shy and I couldn't talk to female senpai. When elevator in Shibu is very small. When I stayed with female classmates and female senpai, I was very shy and I started shaking. When I had to work with a female senpai in Hirusai, I was also very nervous and shy. I started shaking as well. That is an example of average reasonable boy in co-ed school. I doubt interaction is really meaningful. On the second level, Deputy Prime Minister Moe explained that it is important to learn gender equality. But even in case of single-sex school, there are many chances for boys and girls to interact each other, even outside school. For example, maybe in cram school, 鉄力会 or Hiraoka Juku or Zetto kai, I don't know. I used to go to a karate dojo. There are community clubs. Not many girls exist in my karate gym anyway, but coercion is not necessary for people to learn gender role and gender equality.
Point of information?
Final rebuttal. Okay, I'll take it.
I'm guessing that you don't shake anymore when you meet females when you're talking with Luana senpai or talking to us, right? That being said, don't you think that through these scary interactions, you learn and you gain these skills?
Okay, it's applicable to limited number of very brave boys, but I'm talking about vast majority of average reasonable person like me. That is why I think personal information that much then. Finally, thirdly, Moe-chan explained that Luana's point about romantic relationship or romance is not really important in this debate because if you are determined enough, you can focus on study. Environment does not matter. No, we human beings are weak. We are emotional. We are swayed by emotions all the time. Therefore, romance, the elements of romance hijack your mind anyway. Finally, my point, oppression of boys by girls. In youth, girls are very strong, especially in Shibu, and boys are systematically marginalized and oppressed. Two levels. On the first level, my friends in Azabu and Kaisei always said to me, hey, Shibu has a lot of girls. You are having fun, right? And I always answered, you don't know the reality. You don't know how cruel and oppressive girls are. In Shibu, in my generation, all the top positions of school were occupied by girls. On the second level, for example, the president of the student council, the leader of Hirusei committee, the leader of cultural festival, all those top positions were occupied by girls. In talking about the physical ability, you know what, Shibu Female Dojo Club is really strong. In case of physical ability, we boys were literally physically oppressed. Compared to that, at least from my perspective, people in Azabu and Musashi seem to have been spending happy life in peaceful nirvana. Therefore, co-ed is worse and single-sex is better. We're happy to oppose. Thank you.
では、否定側2人目の通訳を始めます。まず、肯定側に対しての反駁として、1つ目に男子はシャイだから異性と話さない。2つ目に別学でも異性とは関われる。例えば習い事とか塾で関われるチャンスはまだある。ということを言ってました。で、次に、ポイント、アーギュメントに移ると、その男子は女子に抑圧されると言ってました。で、例えばミチ先輩が渋々に在学中の時は生徒会長とかトップの仕事はほとんど女子がやっていて、さらに体力では男子は勝つかとも思えますが、そこも女子柔道部、渋々の女子柔道部がとても強いので、そこでも負けてしまってすごい抑圧されるから、男子は男子校の人たちみたいになんていうの、平和に、学校生活を送れないということをおっしゃっていました。では最後にリプライスピーチとして、このディベート、肯定側と否定側のアーギュメントを比較して、どうして自分たちのサイドが勝ったかを証明するスピーチに移ります。
I'll be answering two questions in my speech. Firstly, do co-ed schools prepare students for society? Second, which side is better for gender equality? Firstly, do co-ed schools prepare students for society? Rion, in her Prime Minister's speech, she said that when you talk to people of other genders, that allows you to get used to the experience of talking to aliens. I think she made two assumptions in her speech. The first assumption is that boys and girls are fundamentally different in the way that they communicate. I think the flaw with her argument was that she never explained why boys and girls were different to the extent that special training for this needed to happen by going to a co-ed school. For example, when I say, I have no idea what is going on in class, can somebody please tell me? That does not have to be directed at a boy or a girl in order to be special, right? I can go to a same-sex school and still have that same impact of asking somebody else for help or putting myself out there. I don't think that was a unique point on their side, and therefore that assumption has to fall. But the second assumption that she made was that interaction is frequent and productive. I think Mitsushi already told you that interaction barely happens in the first place because a lot of boys tend to be shy in Shibushibu due to the fact that there is a long tradition of female power. I also have to add my point about romance, right? Because when all interaction between boys and girls happens within a romantic context, it is unlikely to be a productive discussion in the first place. Rather, it's likely to be governed by the traditional gender norms that they're trying to go against. Now, moving on to my second point about which is better for gender equality, right? Moy talks about gender equality and that you're less likely to foster harmful stereotypes towards the other gender. I think we already pointed out that this can just as likely happen in same-gender schools as well, because you probably have teachers from the opposite gender. You can go to places, you can go to other communities, such as Kitsuyokai, to get to know people from the other gender. In comparison, I think Mitsushi gave you a unique point about how gender equality is neglected inside Shibushibu, because boys become non-assertive, right? When it creeps into your mind that you cannot have positions of power, you are less likely to try and go into those positions as an adult. We think having that as a lifestyle in a co-ed school is an incredibly oppressive environment for boys who cannot get those kinds of assertive mindsets in the future. So even if gender equality happens, it comes at the price of half the student population. That is something that we cannot accept. All in all, we say that same-sex schools are better for preparing students for society, and also it creates a better sense of gender equality. Proud to pros.
じゃあ今回は、ルアンナ先輩が紹介してくださった今回のディベートの争点の2つを言います。まずはじめに生徒が共学の学校に行くことによって本当に社会の準備ができるのか。で2つ目に、ジェンダー平等をジェンダー平等にするためには共学と、男女別どっちの方がいいかについての争点でどっちも争点で勝ったと証明していらっしゃいました。では最後のスピーカーとして肯定側のリプライスピーチ、カノン先輩お願いします。
Is this on?
入ってる状態。
はい。
58分から。
Okay. The other side has been talking about how the society we're aiming for is the same. We want a gender equal society, right? And the other side has said that we are the ones implementing these gender norms. However, we say it's the opposite. As Mitsushi senpai pointed out, in our school, girls are thriving. They're doing great, and it's the opposite of society where girls are depressed. We say oppressed. We say that we need this kind of environment from schools in order to fundamentally uproot and change the societal injustice that we face. So in my speech, I'm going to be answering one question. Which side better fulfills the roles of schools? And in that, first I'm going to clarify one thing. What's the difference in relationship between boys and girls in schools? So first of all, what's the difference? Luana senpai has been talking about how guys and girls aren't different enough to need training to interact. I have two things to say to that. First of all, the fact that there is a difference. There's neurologically been proven that there is a difference in the way of thought, the way the guys and girls learn. Therefore, there is a difference scientifically proven. Secondly,
when there is somebody that's fundamentally different from you, for example, you may say something offensive to someone you meet that you've never known, someone of a different country, because you don't know the way that they behave, the way that they're raised. So we say there is a difference that needs to be changed. Secondly, the interaction. This is my refutations against what Mitsushi senpai has said. First of all, he said interaction doesn't happen. I have 4 things to say to this. First of all, look upstairs. You will see guys and girls talking and mingling. And secondly, first of all, it is not unique because the number of guys that feel too shy to talk to girls is the same number of guys that actually feel more comfortable talking to girls. You can see guys who prefer to have girlfriends the same amount that guys who only want to talk to guys. So we say it's not mutually exclusive. Gender doesn't determine who you get along with, it's your personality. Thirdly, we say that I'm sorry if you can't interact with the other gender, but you need to learn how to. Society is made up of both genders, and once you get in there, you're going to have to learn anyway, so you might as well start when you're younger, you have a more flexible mind. Fourthly, we say that even if you don't interact, it's better to at least see each other. Seeing each other, someone of the same age, of a different gender, how they think, how they behave, knowing the differences and how to deal with it, that's important. Now, moving on to comparing this debate and their best case and worst case scenario to ask which one better fulfills the roles of schools. So in their best case scenario, yes, guys and girls can study better. They can become more book smart. Maybe they aren't so distracted by romance. But we say this is only half the responsibility of a school. A responsibility of school is yes to also teach you, but also to prepare you for societal skills. We say that like 10, 20 points on your SAT is much insignificant compared to the societal skills of interacting with the other gender, the other half of society. Secondly, we say that that's their best case scenario. But in our worst case scenario, what happens is, yes, maybe there's a few people that are so distracted by romance that they can't study. Or maybe there's some guys who are too shy, they spend their whole 6 years not talking to girls. That's fine. We say that small number is first of all not unique to their side because guys can still like guys. The LGBTQ, they never proved why there aren't distracted guys in their schools. And furthermore, we say that guys will still go to other schools. Therefore, it is not mutually exclusive. Our worst case is far better than even their best case scenario, and therefore we are very proud to oppose, and we believe that Shibu Shibu is a wonderful co-ed school. Thank you.
顧問兼コーチの北原です。自分もですね、肯定側に入れました。理由はこっちのチームが今のね菅政権の男女バランスのこと、それを解決する、そこの問題点をクリアにしてそれが解決できるんじゃないかっていうすごくねいい意見を言いました。に対してこの2人の先輩はですね、こっちもちゃんと言ってたんですけど、共学なのに勉強もちゃんとやって大成功してるし、こんな卒業してからずっと経つのに男女もめちゃくちゃ仲いい今回のコンビネーション、これすごく説得力なかったなと思って、完璧にこちらに出ました。ありがとうございました。ありがとうね。